Howdy, this is Rick Koppel, broadcasting from Denver, Colorado. Welcome to another episode of PD Man Rick. Today I'll be starting a two-part series on deep brain stimulation. Today's topic will be, is DBS right for me? Part 2, which will be next Thursday, I will be explaining my own experience with DBS, just what happened, what it was like, and all that kind of stuff. Also, I have with me today my wife, who will be assisting me later in this broadcast. Say hi, honey.
Hi.
Yeah, she's kind of laying down at the moment. Anyway, with that, let's cue up the music. First, I need to explain what deep brain stimulation actually is. For those few of you who don't know, for those of you who do, you'll just have to bear with me for about a minute or two as I explain this. Deep brain stimulation is a surgical procedure where they bore holes in your head bilateral, or one or the other side depending on what the situation is, and they insert leads down in your brain, and they have a powerhouse or battery pack, whatever you want to call it, down here. They usually insert up here around the chest, but some cases, like mine, I've got mine down more in my belly. It shoots electrical impulses up through the brain and down to the brain, and it basically modulates the brain waves and activity down there so that it gets rid of tremors. And it also helps other motor symptoms. It doesn't help non-motor symptoms, but it can help motor symptoms like tremors and dystonia and things like that. So that's basically what it is. It is brain surgery, so there is that. So what are the necessary qualifications that you need to have in order to get it? In other words, what do you need to not have, basically? That's what it boils down to. What do you need to have and will not have? First, you need to have Parkinson's Disease or essential tremors or some situation like that it can help, obviously. That probably goes without being said, but some people need to know that, I guess. The next part is you can't have any dementia problems of any kind. In other words, your memory needs to be pretty decent because it can affect your memory. It's affected mine in little ways so far. Mainly just short-term memory. It's like I'll frequently forget where I'm going, what I'm doing when I get there. I know that's a common problem with a lot of people, especially as people get older. But it's been noticeably increased over the last year or two. I had my deep brain stimulation back in September 2017. So otherwise my memory is pretty good, but I have those little glitches. But if you have dementia problems, it's going to tend to make them worse. So I don't want you to start out unless there was a situation where I knew one guy back in Texas who had deep brain stimulation, who did have dementia, but they wanted him to be able to interact with the kids better. And apparently he was always, with his Parkinson's face, all that kind of stuff, just didn't work very well with interacting with the kids, and he was just kind of a zombie, I guess. So they figured at least some interaction was better than nothing, so they went ahead and did it. You also need to have good balance. I did a lot of Zumba when I was doing this, so a lot of exercise and bouncing around, so I was in good shape overall, and I had good balance. Because you end up with a lot of situations like I had, like where you're acting drunk all the time. Not all the time, but when you're electricity is turned up, you actually have electricity going through the rest of your nervous system too. So you have a lack of coordination more, and as well as basic balance issues. I have to do lunges to get down to the floor to get stuff. If I just do what I used to do, which is go on my tiptoes and dip down, I tend to fall backwards if I'm not careful. So there is that. So you need to have good balance, and you need to have good memory. And one of the things they did actually was to send me to a psychologist to give me a memory test, evaluate my ability to do DBS surgery. And then, of course, you have to have the other certain qualifications, like I went to get a physical to make sure I was able to have surgery to begin with, any kind of surgery. Because this is voluntary, you don't have to do it, but you do it because you think that you're going to get a benefit out of it. And Parkinson's disease, what are the other considerations you have? Well, yeah, you need to be able to have bad enough PD symptoms to make it worthwhile, for one thing. So, like, I had all these bad symptoms where I was on a high dose of levodopa. I would take one 250 milligram pill of levodopa, carbidopa, 4 times a day. And so I was on this continual roller coaster going over the day period 4 times a day, where about 1 hour out of that cycle I would have what I would classify as feeling normal. And then all the rest of the time I was either down in the low section where I was off, and so I had more tremors and stuff. And then when I got up to the top of the thing, I'd have dyskinesia on that end. So you need to be able to have good symptoms of PD that are debilitating in some way or another. You don't want to start it off usually on your first year or two, although there is some studies and stuff that show that it might be beneficial to start it early. But usually most people start off when the medicine stops working as effectively as it should. Because after all, it is brain surgery. So one of the things you'll be judging is the risk versus benefits assessment in your own mind. Because while it is a personal decision, there's also risk involved in getting it, as there is with any surgery, but there's also risk involved. There's about a 2 to 3% risk of hemorrhages in the brain, and that's something to consider because that can lead to strokes or paralysis and things like that. But it is only a 2 to 3% risk, so you have to kind of judge, well, am I so sick of living like this I'm ready to risk it or not, so that's one consideration. Matter of fact, I know when I was having my surgery done, there was a doctor who in surgery, whose sole purpose was just to look at a screen, to watch the MRIs. He put the lead in and went through my brain to make sure he didn't hit any blood vessels or anything. So if he got close to one, he would tell the doctor, I guess, surgeon, hold on. I don't remember if that happened or not specifically, but I don't think so, but it might have. It's kind of hard to know. Anyway, so anyway, you have those risk versus benefit ratios. Hemorrhaging. There's also a 15% risk of infection in your brain. My doctor slathered all sorts of stuff all over me, so I didn't have much of a chance of infection, I guess. Plus, I'm pretty good immune system, I suppose. So I didn't get an infection anyway, luckily. But even if you do, even though it's bothersome, they maybe have to take the unit back out of the brain, put another one in, that kind of thing. So it's a little more trouble because you got to go back into surgery and all that kind of stuff. But If it's just an infection, they have ways to deal with that, and it usually doesn't damage the brain permanently. There's also side effects that you have, like I mentioned above, with the lack of coordination. There's also tingling in the face and the limbs. Matter of fact, the only time I've experienced that specifically is when I switch programs. When I switch up to my high version program, I feel this whoosh of electrical energy race over my body every time. It goes away pretty quick, but it's weird. Kind of feel that. So you have these side effects. You have the risk of hemorrhaging and that kind of thing that you have to take into consideration when you're making your evaluation whether what you're experiencing and the potential benefit of it will be worth the risk that you're taking. For myself, I feel it was well worth the risk and the side effects I have to put up with. I'll go into more detail on that next week. But as I was talking before, I now don't have, I'm feel pretty normal most of the day. I don't have to worry about dyskinesia. I take a little bit of about half a pill 3 times a day of 100 milligram levodopa to help with my non-motor symptoms like drooling. Bleh. I tend to drool a little bit more if I don't have that and things like that. So I'm on a little bit half a pill. It was kind of funny because one of the things that you do get with DBS is you get more dyskinesia if you're taking the medication and the pill together. So I took one full pill and it wasn't obvious I had dyskinesia, but I could feel it in my neck, pushing my head down like I used to do all the time. And so I thought, well, that's probably just barely on the edge of too much. So, whereas that pill originally wouldn't have caused any dyskinesia in me at all, that low dose of cinnamon. But anyway, so I think is well worth it for me, and I think my wife would agree.
100%.
Yeah. What did you notice in my changes?
Just, the lack of dyskinesia was a big one.
Yeah.
And just the lack of your symptoms, the up and down of symptoms and dyskinesia. And
yeah, you also noted that
you were more
facial
expressive,
expressions,
more interactive, more lively. You were able to hold your head up better.
Yeah.
You're able to get back a lot of abilities you had, like typing and stuff.
Yeah.
That you weren't able to do much before.
Right.
You're able to start working a little bit.
Right. And just kind of as a way of a demonstration, one of the reasons I have my wife here with me not only is to give a glowing recommendation on it, but also to give a demonstration. I wanted her here because I think I've turned myself off once accidentally. And that was at a Parkinson's support group. Accidentally.
Pretty funny.
And they had the DBS guy there. So they were talking about DBS and I was talking about mine, and I don't know how I did, but somehow I turned it off accidentally. and I was shaking around going,
I was like, what's going on? It's not working.
It's like right after they put me together, so it was like right after they turned me on, I think it's first meeting after that. And so it was kind of weird because I was like shaking there, and so the guy looks at it and says, "Oh, you're off." I said, "Oh." And I was shaking too much at that time to really make it hard, and it made it hard to turn it back on, so he turned it up back on for me. So I want her here in case I need her help to turn it back on.
Yeah, and you might mention as far as the changes DBS made is about your family and how they saw you before, and then after they saw you after, they were just so amazed. They were like, "Oh my gosh, it's a miracle."
Yeah.
You're like a new person. You're like you used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And, various people have different results with this, so that's another consideration. You may have not have as good results. There's also something else I forgot to mention. There's two ways you can have DBS done, and one way is to be awake for the procedure. And what that means is that you're awake when they're cutting into your skull and drilling into your bone out of the way so they can get to the brain. And they insert the leads in. And the reason they do that is because then you can verify that they got the leads in the right place, which is what I did. I had it done that way. And it is a little odd to think they're sitting there cutting on you and drilling and all that kind of stuff, but some people have problems with that.
But they did kind of have you go in and out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that even though I was awake for that part of it, and once they had verified that they had the leads in the right place and locked it in and everything, then they pretty much put me out for the rest of the procedure while they sewed me back together and did everything they needed to do, I guess, on that end. So, yeah. And there's the other way where you're asleep the whole time. They can do that now, which they used to just do it all awake, but they can do it when you're asleep because some people have problems being awake for that part of it. And the only problem with that is my surgeon explained, is that they pretty much try to get it in the right place, and they've got a lot of procedures and stuff so they can get it right where it needs to be, but they don't know for sure until they turn you on whether it's going to work or not. And so if it doesn't work, or you don't have a good outcome because the leads aren't in the exact right spot for it, then they'll have to go back in and do it all over again. I mean, not all over, but they have to adjust the leads down to where it needs to be. So that's the reason I wanted to get it while I was awake, because I didn't want to go through this more than once if I had to. As it turned out, where they ended up first time was the right spot. So I guess I could have got it while I was asleep, but oh well. So without further ado, I'm going to go get my I guess I need to show you the DBS modulator, whatever they call that thing.
You better remind me how to turn this back on.
Yeah, I'll show you.
I haven't messed with that for quite a long time.
Yeah, this is the DBS unit that turns me on and off and adjusts my programming and stuff like that. What I have to do is my battery's down here, and so I turn it on like that. Hear it beep, and then it shows my settings. I'm okay. Now this is on off switch here that turns the whole thing on and off. So I'm going to turn myself off, this button here. And then if after a few seconds of that, I'm sure it won't be pleasant for me, but after a few seconds of that, we'll push this button again, put it back up here, it'll beep and it'll turn on again. Then you'll see it go, those tremors go away. Hopefully.
Better.
Yeah. So anyway, here we go. Ready?
So it's that button to turn it back on. That's all I have to do.
Right.
Okay.
I have no idea how bad this is going to get or how bad it's going to get.
Tell me when.
I'm kind of waiting. This may be about it. I don't know if it'll get worse or not or what.
Can you sit
but
down?
Anyway, I got to turn it back on, I guess. Okay. Should it say it's on?
Yes, it says it's on.
Okay. That's how it works. That's a demonstration of DBS at work.
The power.
My left hand which shows right on your screen, I'm sure. Yeah, so now you've seen it live. Well, not live, but you've seen it happen. So, getting DBS is a bit of a scary process when you're being wheeled into the room. I remember thinking when I was being prepped up, I was thinking, I'm doing this voluntarily? They're going to go, because anytime you go to surgery, it's a little bit scary. You never know what's going to happen. And I had visions of my poor wife taking care of a vegetative state, like they go, whoops! But it doesn't really happen that way. And they're pretty good. Usually surgeries are pretty safe nowadays. They like to say it's like 2 or 3% risk of hemorrhaging. My surgeon actually had a lower chance of risk of hemorrhaging based on his history because he was good. And I had it done in Austin, Texas, at St. David's Hospital North, and it was pretty interesting experience, which I'll tell you more about next time. That said, I do it all over again. It's not perfect, but I've regained a significant amount of functionality. Thanks to DBS, I can't tell you whether it will be worth it for you, however, because I don't know what your outcome is going to be. You have that decision to make. But if you have impairment from off-on periods and from dyskinesia, dystonia, or other motor symptoms, then DBS may well be the solution for you. So, I'll tell you more about my situation next time. Until then, remember, be you, because only you can do you like you can. Bye.